Hi everybody. Today I'm going to be demoing how to do equal-sized um, objects in one-point perspective. So how we're going to start is we're going to take our ruler and make a horizon line. And we're going to make that horizon line in red so that it's nice and visible. And then I'm going to make a cube that make a Rubik's Cube. So I'm going to choose where the vanishing point for my Rubik's Cube is going to be. And I'm going to place it here towards the bottom of my page. And I'm going to make that the face of that Rubik's Cube be 3 inches by 3 inches. So I'm just working so that my lines are parallel to the picture plane. And I'm making a square. That's the first thing we're going to do. That is 3 inches by 3 inches. And that's just an easy measurement for me to make the Rubik's Cube. It can be any size you really want. I'm going to take each of the corners of this square and I'm going to point them towards the vanishing point, making them three-dimensional. So take each corner and take a line to that vanishing point. And then I'm going to decide how deep and how big the cube is going to be by placing a vertical line on the side, and then wherever it touches, creating a equal horizontal line at the top. So now I have a cube with the top plane visible to me because it's under my eye level, and then two sides visible to me. So now I want to turn this into a Rubik's Cube, and so I'm going to take the front of this cube and I'm going to divide it into 6 equal sections. So I'm measuring out an inch on vertically, and I'm going to connect these lines, making sure I'm making a nice vertical line. That's actually a little bit better. And I'm going to do the same thing horizontally. I'm just going to use my ruler, mark off 1-inch sections on both the left and the right, and then connect them to a grid. So because the front of my cube is in 1-point perspective, here I'm just dealing with vertical and horizontal lines that are not diminishing towards the vanishing point. But if I want my Rubik's Cube to look realistic, I need to create equal distant cubes or grids on the top and side plane. But how do we do that? Well, we have to use our vanishing point, and we have to use a little bit of math. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take where these lines correspond with the edge of the side plane, and I'm going to point those to the vanishing point. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the top. I wonder if I should extend these all the way. Maybe I will, just for consistency and so that you guys can see that they are going all the way to the vanishing point. And go back in and add those lines in that are extending all the way down. Okay, so now I have these lines. They were really easy to get. But how do we get these corresponding lines on this side? Well, it's a little bit more tricky. So the easiest thing to do is we can use a diagonal line to break up this form. And if we use a diagonal line to break up this form, and we want these squares to be equal distance from each other, wherever that diagonal line hits these lines that are diminishing towards the vanishing point is actually where those equal sized cubes are going to be. So we're going to do this. And then a couple of things, we can actually do the same thing on the top. So let's actually try it so you guys can see that it will work. And wherever those hit are going to be horizontal lines, or we could have taken these two lines and just put a horizontal line through them. But now we actually have 2 points of reference, making it easier for us to make that line. So, so we can really think about how one line should be hitting that mark, the other line should be hitting that mark, and all of a sudden I have a nice Rubik's Cube. And I could even fill in its corresponding color blocks here so that we can really see how that cube is truly functioning in perspective. I'm not coloring them in very precisely, just giving you a little bit of that illusion so that it can be really easy to see. So now you might also be wondering, okay, great, that's for a cube, but what if you want to make a bunch of telephone poles and you want them to go into the deep desert perspective? Well, the first thing you're going to need to know is the height of your first telephone pole. Usually telephone poles straddle the horizon line, so some of them are above the horizon line, some of them are below the horizon line. And after I have that, I'm going to point its edges to the vanishing point, like that. And then I can't quite tell where the next telephone poles are going to be. In order to do that, I need to know where the second telephone pole is going to be. So if I had a second telephone pole, now I can actually get all the other telephone poles correctly in perspective. So how do we do that? Well, first we need to find the middle of this trapezoidal shape that's between the 2 telephone poles. And to do that, we need to put 2 diagonal lines through it, which where they cross will be the middle of that form. So this is the middle of that form. And again, these are telephone poles, so let me just give them just a little bit of character. I don't know if we need that yet, but it's okay if we do. These telephone poles, they're a little close together. That's okay. And then they're going to have lines connecting each other. I don't know if that was quite right. It's a little bit funny. But anyway, they're connecting. I feel like my connection lines are a little funny. But between these 2 telephone poles, I have found this center point. And then if I take that center point and I point it towards the vanishing point, I have now found the center of this entire triangle. After I have the center line, what I can do is I can go from the bottom of this trapezoid through the middle and make a line that goes from the bottom through the middle, then extend that line, and wherever it hits is going to be my next telephone pole. So let's do that again, from the bottom through the middle. And wherever that hits is going to be my next telephone pole. And let's do it again, from the bottom through the middle. It's really through the opposite middle. Wherever it hits is going to be my next telephone pole. Bottom, middle. Kind of get the idea. Next telephone pole. And they're going to correctly recede in space. And I can reinforce them. And maybe I can even redeem myself by drawing a slightly better wire that's going between them. I don't know what I was thinking there, because I believe that that wire is going to go, now that I think about it, I'm not sure, but anyway, they're going to somehow connect. So that is some about making equal distant objects in 1 point perspective. We could actually do one more version of this in 1 point perspective. So let's go to another page. And let's take our ruler and get our horizon line on here again. And this one is going to be a checkered floor. So how do we create a checkered floor? Well, the first thing that we need to know about a checkered floor is our first little tile. So if we create a tile, and actually the easiest way to do this is to actually break up our page a little bit first. So let's make 3-inch sections on the bottom of this page. And let's just make this blue line where the bottom of my floor is going to be. And this little section is going to be my first tile. So on this tile floor, I only have 4 tiles. That's totally okay. I'm pretty close to that checkered floor. So I have the width of this first tile. And let's say that the vanishing point for this checkered floor is here. And it can be almost anywhere on the horizon line, but it's just somewhere on the horizon line. And now I'm going to take the 2 edges of my checkered floor and I'm going to point them to that vanishing point. And I have to make a decision about how tall this first tile is that's a part of my floor. So I just have to make that as a choice. Now, all of these first tiles, the ones that are on the bottom here, are going to all be the same size. So I'm going to take the little marks that I made. I'm going to point all of them to that vanishing point. I'm going to use the edges of my paper as well. Okay, so now I want to make tiles that are this size, going all the way back in perspective, but correctly diminishing in perspective. So how do I do that? Well, if you go from the bottom corner of one through the opposite corner of the other and extend that line through all the lines that are converging, you will find your next set of tiles. So wherever that line hits, here, here, and here, are going to be our next set of tiles. And so we just want to make sure that as we're building those out, we keep our ruler parallel to the picture plane. And then we can keep going. So we can go, it doesn't really matter which direction you go in, but we can go from the bottom of one tile through the other tile, through the opposite side of that same tile, excuse me. And wherever those hit are going to be our next set of tiles. So let me just make sure that I'm going parallel to the picture plane here. And we can go as far back as we want with that same method. Also, if we wanted to get the other tiles that we seem to be missing here from the side, we could take any tile and we can extend a line. And wherever these hit, if we point those to the vanishing point, we would get the rest of those same tiles. So that we can, even if they weren't visible on that first line, we can get the rest of our tiles. And we could do it in any direction. We can continue them out on this direction too. So this is how you make a checkered floor in 1 point perspective.